Hey friends, Happy New Year. Before we get started on this new season of The Voyagers, I'm happy to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Maui Dream Properties and our good friend Jonathan Udis, realtor and real estate advisor, one of the most trusted real estate experts on the island of Maui. If you're looking to relocate to the island or have been dreaming of owning your own slice of paradise, Jonathan loves to help make people's real estate dreams come true. Whether buying, selling, or investing, his mission is to serve his clients with passion, enthusiasm, integrity, and excellence. We've gotten to know Jonathan over the last few years, and you will not find a more caring and trustworthy realtor than him. If you're even curious about your potential life on one of the most beautiful islands in the world, check out MauiDreamProperties.com and drop Jonathan a hello and get started on making your dream a reality. Now let's get to it. I'm David Glenn Taylor. Welcome to 2021. This is the Voyagers Podcast. I'm curious, how much time did you spend during this past year dreaming that you could be somewhere else? Did your mind wander off to a happy place more than once? Perhaps a mountain meadow or a warm tropical beach? For my wife and I, that place was the streets of Rome. She follows this wonderful account on Instagram by author and chef Elizabeth Mincilli, who has these Italian cookbooks and has become a master of the Instagram story. She does this daily walk through Italian towns, and Maria began announcing every morning after coffee, how about a walk through Rome? And we'd settle in and let her take us to little coffee shops and gelateria, or find the perfect place for olive oil or a flawless artichoke. In the US, these things are usually all in one spot, but in Rome, shopping for your groceries is a walk through history. And each shop boasts an expertise that your local Safeway can only dream of. So we escaped every day, and it was lovely. But through the pandemic, that became, for me at least, a bit of a torture. Because after a while, that picture of fresh mozzarella didn't really satisfy. I wanted that mozzarella in my mouth. I wanted to taste that coffee. I wanted to experience that pasta. I wanted to hear the church bells in Rome firsthand through my ears and not filtered through a speaker. But that was 2020, and though we are still dealing with the pandemic in a big way, we can now begin to see the end. It's coming. There's a lot of predictions out there that travel will rebound by third quarter this year. So, for me, this first episode of Season 2, I wanted to sit with a friend in one of Hawaii's top travel minds and dream a bit. Dream of faraway places that are waiting to be explored. Mike Cuthbertson is the managing director of Destination Residences Hawaii, a resort management company specializing in exclusive vacation residences on Maui for more than 30 years. He spent his career living and managing a resort life, and though he and his family have settled here on Maui, their travel dreams are still top of mind. I wanted our conversation to be up to date, so Mike and I talked just a few days ago. We sat in his basement and we sipped some good whiskey. Mike dished some travel wisdom that I am very, very happy to share with all of you now. Everybody has something interesting to say, and there's fascinating people everywhere, but I found that Maui has such an odd concentration of ridiculously interesting people. You know what I mean?
It is.
It's and well, you've traveled all over the world. Have you found that elsewhere as well? Or do you look at Maui and go, yeah, Maui is actually unusual that way?
I think in most of the places I've been, I think that's been repeated.
Oh, really?
There's this aggregation of incredibly interesting backgrounds and incredibly interesting souls and stories in some of these locations. And I say that because of the destination itself.
Right.
That people are choosing that location to go live.
Right, sure. That makes sense.
Pull the lifestyle, whatever it may be, the weather, you think about Aspen, which was home for so long. Aspen was founded on this idea of Aspen, that it was this aggregation of diverse backgrounds and amazing minds coming together in this place that wasn't Chicago, it wasn't New York, it wasn't Denver, it wasn't LA. It was this place that they could all come together from all over the world and express and share their ideas. And the Aspen idea was born, this is the early 60s with Pepke and really founding of Aspen. And that's grown into now the Aspen Ideas Fest. And it's grown into so much,
And so many Aspen copycats.
Right.
I mean, it's a real thing now, right?
Yeah. But then you find that in these unique locations, I think, that are like a Maui or an Aspen, or a Telluride was just a similar small version of Aspen, where this cultural base is so diverse, and you have the guy, the family, the husband, the wife, whoever, that are coming for maybe 3 months or 6 months, but you have other people who have dedicated their lives to being there, or that's where their respite is, right? That they get away to, and everybody comes to be equal in the place, and
equal in the place. That's really unique, because I've lived in cities and small towns. Maui's the first place that I've been to where you meet a celebrity or a millionaire or a super successful CEO, or you meet all these people and they're wearing board shorts and a t-shirt, and this is what, right, the equalization of that, whether it's fantastical or not, and true or not, at its core, there's a certain amount of that definitely happens, because you take that same person and you're back in New York City or whatever, he's wearing a $3,000 suit and you're I'm still wearing the same board shorts.
yeah exactly, right? Like we're the same wherever we go, and but somebody else is living their other life, and they come there to be different. It was I think one of the first places that ever really hit me hard was when we lived in Telluride, and Oprah had a home there. Right. And it wasn't uncommon to see Oprah on the street, right? Like and Oprah wasn't there and dressed up, right? And Oprah may be the extreme example, but Daryl Hannah, perfect example as well. Tom Cruise, my wife gave Tom Cruise ski lessons in Telluride, right? Okay. But everybody was there for the joy and the love of the place, and that's what mattered more than any class or economic regime that you came from, or strata, or your background. Everybody's equal in these amazing locations, much less so when you get to the cities and the urban world. And, I think that's probably why I've always gravitated towards a resort life, is that it strips everybody down pretty quickly.
Well, let's talk about that. Your resort life. You've lived all over the world, and I know you and I have talked about this many times. But it's Florida, Colorado, Italy, Kauai, Maui. Anywhere else that I'm missing?
Yeah, a couple places. Amazingly enough.
I was like, I know. I'm guaranteed. I'll go. Oh yeah, you told me that.
Where? So born and raised in Seattle, like you, right? And had to shake off the webbed feet after a while. Right. But, during college, I lived in Glacier Park, Montana, for a while. Oh, wow. I moved as a ski bum to Alta, Utah for a while. I lived in New Mexico for a while I was in college.
Where in New Mexico?
So between Los Alamos and Taos.
Oh, that's right. Yep. That's right. Yeah.
So I had family in Los Alamos, and spent a lot of time there growing up, and that was really a second home for me. But all of those things during college, I didn't realize it at the time, but it was like the building blocks for what I was creating as sort of the fence around my life, or the parameters for how I wanted to live my life in the future. That I met these people in all these locations that had traveled and lived all over the world, right? And this happened to be their stop at that point. And I remember leaving Glacier Park for the summer, and a big group of my friends was moving to Breckenridge to go for the winter, but they were going to spend the fall in South America. And I was like, I want that. I want what those guys have. That sounds fantastic. And it was really at that stage that I realized I wanted to live 52 weeks a year, where other people are just trying to vacation for 2 weeks a year. Right.
And you pretty much have. I mean, Miami is a big city, but it's still, you were in the kind of the vacation-y side of that, right?
Yeah, we were in South Beach, and in the heart of it, right? So being in South Beach was a little bit different. I mean, even going, because
that's a big city.
Even going over the causeway to Miami felt like you were going to the big city. We spent a ton of time down in the Keys. We had some very dear friends who lived in Key West, so we used to spend a lot of time getting away. But Miami Beach is a unique, and a South Beach especially, destination unto itself. So you kind of have that microcosm there, that absolute melting pot of vacation destination, if you will. Those were during college. And then I think the other place that you missed in there was I spent some time in Lake Tahoe, actually, after Miami. Right. Miami was the first year since I was in 4th grade that I didn't ski that summer, and it was that winter, and it was so painful. We left Miami and spent some time in about 6 or 8 weeks in Costa Rica, and then we drove across the country to Lake Tahoe. Jeez. This was right after 9/11.
Yeah. And you say we, you're talking about Janine.
Janine and I,
Yeah. Yeah.
And we showed up in Lake Tahoe with about $2 to our name and no jobs, and it happened to be 3 months after 9/11 and nobody was hiring, and we said, you know what, we're gonna stick this out and figure it out, and it all worked out a couple months later. You know, everything came back to life, and the stars aligned. But
jeez, man. Yeah. But you're not a big city guy. You know, Marie and I moved away from the big city, and you know, we moved from Seattle to Anchorage, Alaska in 1999. Anchorage is, quote unquote, a big city, but it's a small town. Right. You know, it's 350,000 people or whatever. And then, you know, we've done small towns ever since. And Maui's definitely a small town, you know, a small island. Mm-hmm. Could you ever see yourself, I mean, honestly, like, could you see yourself living in a Seattle or a San Francisco, or, you know, I know Janine's from San Francisco, you know, she grew up in the city, right?
Right.
I mean, could you see yourself living there? Or is that something that you just go, no, I'm not?
It's something that I put away a long time ago. I never really saw myself staying in the city. And right. Like I said, being in college and taking trimesters off mm-hmm. and moving away on my own as well at that point, it really taught me a lot, and it fortified, I think, this desire to ensure that my life was built around my lifestyle first and not around my job first. And I have a lot of tremendous friends who are still in the city in Seattle and have been there ever since we graduated, right? And have amazing, wonderful families. They've bought houses, they've been anchored there, and they've always looked at me and said, how the hell do you move around so much? I don't get it. Yeah. And we've always said, you just do it. Yeah. You know, you just make it happen. So no, I don't think I could see myself back in the city. I think San Francisco may be the closest city to what I would want to be a part of. The proximity of the mountains, the ability to escape that city into the Marin Headlands is phenomenal. Yeah. The ability to be on the water there is tremendous. So that's kind of a unique situation, but I think it would take a heck of a lot to get me to actually relocate. But
that leads to the question of, like, I know that you know, Marie and I have had a similar kind of life in terms of we've moved around a lot and stuff like that. Where do you feel home? And do you ever kind of have that, you know, or do you have those kind of times where you're like, yeah, I don't feel rooted anywhere? Do you ever have that experience?
You know, we left Seattle, left the University of Washington, and packed up the Subaru station wagon and moved to Telluride. And we spent 2 years in Telluride that were absolutely tremendous. Yeah. And being in a location like that, you get exposed to so many different people. And, you know, General Schwarzkopf was the first person to walk my dog besides, you know, Janine and I, right? Like, he would babysit our dog while...
General Norman Schwarzkopf?
Yes. So he lived right up the street from the hotel I was working at.
How did you end up walking your dog, though?
And so he would come in all the time, and he hung out in the bar. He'd get coffee with us every morning. Amazing gentleman. Just, you know, you're just kind of in awe being around him. Storm and Norman, exactly.
Oh my God.
And we bought our first golden puppy together, and we both worked at the same time. So we'd bring the dog to work with us, and it would sit in the crate in the back of my Jeep, and we would go out and walk, and we'd take turns. And I brought him up to the lobby one time, and Fisher got to meet Norman, and
I'm trying to imagine.
And he said, "What is that dog doing? You know, let me take care of him for a little bit." And so he took him on the gondola ride from Mountain Village down to town in Telluride, and walked him around and brought him back in the afternoon. And the dog had the VIP treatment. But
so they're like the leader of the United States Armed Forces walking a dog. That's a great image.
It's hilarious.
I love it.
And just, you know, again, an absolute gentleman. And I remember telling Janine, she was like, somebody took the dog? I said, yeah, but if you're going to give our brand new puppy to somebody to take care of,
that guy.
General Schwarzkopf's a pretty good place to start, right?
If I could think of anybody that wanted to walk my dog.
Right. I think he's going to be okay. I'm not worried about it. When we left Colorado, we moved back to Seattle for a brief bit, and then we moved to South Beach, Miami. And we always knew we were kind of a fish out of water in South Beach. That was just a fun adventure. It was the right time in our lives, and we were looking to move out of the cold and move somewhere fun and warm and go to the beach. And I had a great job opportunity with some people that I've worked with previously. And then we left from there and moved back to Lake Tahoe. And I think it was the time when we moved back to Lake Tahoe that we realized we felt this yearning for Colorado. We felt that, what you were referring to, that sense of home, that grounding. Yeah. And we appreciated being in Lake Tahoe, but it didn't provide the same connection of the unique old mining towns of Colorado that have, before they were ski resorts, they were incredible towns. And they were very wealthy towns. They were very industrious little towns, but they were at the remote edge of the earth. And you didn't have a situation where people came up for the weekend and then left. You had a situation where when you went to Telluride, like you meant to get to Telluride, right? That's a very purposeful adventure. So we found ourselves really wanting to get back to Colorado. We moved to Aspen at that point, and that was home. I was home for 14 years.
Wow.
The longest I've lived anywhere besides my parents' house.
You lived in Aspen for 14 years.
Yeah.
I did not know that. I know we've talked about Aspen. I didn't know you guys were there that long.
Yeah, we were there for a long time. And that's where, we were in Aspen when we moved to Italy and then moved back. So again, that was the home base. Lived in Aspen for a while, then moved to Carbondale, Colorado, which is just down valley from there, and the coolest, funkiest town ever. And Carbondale stole our hearts, and Aspen was all the exposure to everything you can want: the Aspen Santa Fe Ballet, the Ideas Fest, the international ski events, the Winter National that would happen there. It's just it's an unreal place to live and enjoy everything about the mountains in the summer and the winter. So that was home. That was really our first sense as a couple, creating our worlds together, that we found a foundation.
Right.
Or created a foundation. And
so do you feel the ache? I mean, when you ache, do you get the aches for Aspen?
So the interesting thing is that when we moved out here, we moved to Maui on a temporary project, and we knew it was 6 to 8 months we were going to be out here. So we actually, shut up our house, and dogs went to my parents' house, and we flew out here. And about a month into being out here with the whole family, I definitively remember sitting around the table, and we were up at the property that's now Montage, Kapalua, and we're sitting around the dinner table, and I remember everybody almost in unison, and I don't remember what caused this or triggered it. Almost everybody, my daughters are 4 and 6 right at the time, and my wife, and we all said, this feels like home. And there was a real connection, and I think we were very blessed with the people we encountered up there. We were welcomed to Maui and Hawaii in a super unique way, just with all the graciousness of aloha and the appreciation for the tradition of Hawaii and the culture of Hawaii. And we just found a groove, and interestingly enough, we moved back to Colorado after this temporary job was up, and we literally went back and sold everything. We sold the house, we sold a lot we were
after
building
14
a house
years,
on.
boom.
We dropped everything, and our sole goal was to get back to Hawaii. We don't look at Hawaii as a displacement of Colorado as home. We look at it as another home that we have, and they're very similar. And people, 10,000 feet in the mountains or down at sea level, right? They're very different, but they're very similar in the people that they attract, the outdoor lifestyle that you lead, the activities, the adventure, the energy of the place is so similar to being in Colorado. So it wasn't a stretch for this to become home. So if I had to answer today, Maui's home, Hawaii's home.
Been working and running high-end kind of things, very posh kind of stuff. I know that the club in Italy was a bit on the high end, right? You're in Tuscany. What do you like about that type of work, and what is the drawback?
Italy is probably the most exciting example to talk from that, because it's the absolute extreme, right?
What was extreme about it?
Castello di Casale in Tuscany is one of those magical places, and I always used to say that you can look at the photography of the space, the countryside, and fall in love. And then when you get there, it's one of the few places in the world where the photography actually doesn't do justice to the place that you're at, right?
Tuscany at large. Right?
At large, in general.
Completely.
The light is impossible to capture. The specialness of the light and the way that it filters and the way that the rolling hills glow and move. It's so dynamic. Absolutely incredible. So being out there was just tremendous. but we were out there, right? We lived in a town where I think one other person spoke English, and it was a Canadian woman who married into a family who owned a tobacco shop in Cole di Valdelsa, and she moved back, and I think she even said, I didn't realize what I was getting into when I moved back here, but she adopted us when we moved there. It was amazing. And we had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old at the time, or no, we had a 2.5-year-old and a newborn. Take that back. But being out in the countryside in this private club at the time that I was there, only the private club was open. It is now the Grand Manor of the estate has opened as the Castello di Casale Hotel, which is currently run by Belmont. The thing I love about that environment, and generally speaking, the boutique hospitality hotel environment, is the intimacy and the personalization of the connections you can make. It's all about delivering an authentic experience that is meaningful and long-lasting. The private club experience, or the real estate ownership experience, which is another big part of my career. That component of, you have guests that don't come for 3 days and leave. You have guests that come back for months or weeks. And they do that for years. And the challenge in that environment is, how do you make that just as magical on year 15?
Is that really the challenge?
Absolutely.
And that's what so that's the kind of thing that's consuming you and your staff, like how to do that.
How do you
give me an
continue to bring this to life?
Yeah.
So the beauty of it, and one of the amazing things, is you would learn just as much from your owners and your guests who are coming to these locations as they would learn from you, because they'd been coming there for 10, 15, 20 years before you. So they had stories, they had recollections, they had places that they had been all over, and then they zeroed in on, say, Castello di Casale as an example. This was going to be their home where they were going to invest for the long term. Now, what that person is looking for, they're not looking for the animation of a hotel. They're not looking for who has the newest cake pops in the lobby, or and I don't mean to play that down.
No, cake pops are great.
It's a tremendous experience within a hotel environment that you have to continually invent and be very progressive within a hotel environment. You have to keep your amenities up. It's a very competitive environment. But in a private club, those people didn't come there to be entertained. They don't need to be entertained. They need a conduit to a culture and a lifestyle and a special connection to a place. One of the things we had on that property was a winery. So we had
owned by the club.
Owned by the club.
Oh, wow.
And we had, if I recall right, 180 acres of vineyards on the property, and they're all spread throughout. We also had our own olive oil that we made, and olive trees, and so it was a very experiential property where all of the properties were in fact sharecroppers' homes. So they were all surrounded by these farming types of environments, and the ability for an owner to come and engage in those activities was brilliant.
Like, go make olive oil.
Yeah, or make wine and come back 3 years later and have it coming through its process. Be able to sit in with the winemaker and literally tasting right out of the cask prior to blending anything together, and being a part of that experience. That's a tremendous experience for anybody to do, but for them to have that connection and then come back and literally see that bottled, and then that ends up on their table, and that ends up back in their homes in the United States or in the UK or wherever they were from. That was a tremendous opportunity. We had these amazing governante who were like the caretakers of the homes, right? They were like the mistresses of the house, and they would cook the most amazing meals. And so every time you had a meal with them, it was something you couldn't pay for at a restaurant. You'll never get that. This is as good as being invited into somebody's home and they're bringing it to you, and they're cooking in your home for you. And, or you'd have the surprise if you'd go out for the day and they would have cooked and left something baking, and you'd come home to that. And it was just amazing, right? And so those types of things that you could do in that environment were just tremendous. It's really demanding, but the idea is to bring these like authentic conduits to really make a real connection. And that's what I find is the difference between the private club world or the real estate ownership world, where you're seeing people over and over again. So the Spitshine wears off after a little while of some of the little inventive things that you do, but you have to keep creating these real, authentic, and tried and true connections with them.
Okay, so you've got owners, and these owners are, very, very wealthy, very successful. They have places all over the world or whatever that they go to. But you guys are making these extremely personal connections. You're building friendships with these people too, right? I'm very curious about how the intersection of a corporate space, you're working there, you're an employee, you guys are doing this because it's your job, but you're building genuine friendships, with people, with owners and people like that. How does that intersect? Where does it get complicated? What's the kind of the beautiful side of that too?
Right.
I mean, you had to have made friends with some of these people that you're still in contact with, or how does that work?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because genuine connection is genuine connection, no matter if you're getting paid to do it or not.
Yeah.
Right? When you create those kinds of environments, they're meaningful.
Yeah. Absolutely. And in a place like that,
right,
even more so.
Yeah.
Right? In the heart of Tuscany, 45 minutes from Florence. Florence is a different city. It's an amazing, brilliant city, but you may have people who come and go a little bit more. Yeah. When you're out in the countryside, those people are there for life.
Right.
They live down the street. Their family owns the farm that's adjacent to there. Or their family worked this farm before it became a resort or before it became any sort of development.
Hundreds of years.
Their connection to the space is unreal. Right. And so those connections are real. We've had employees who are invited to weddings halfway around the world and flown over by the owners themselves.
Right. Wow.
To come and be a part of it. They genuinely bring gifts. They travel together. And I think that's one of the things that we did very well in these locations, is to make a connection that was well above and beyond the employee or the served and the service provider, right? It was more so of a welcome home.
Yeah.
Like, that is my duty, is to make your home, our home, as comfortable as possible,
right,
and as connected as possible. So you truly had some incredibly genuine relationships that were built on trust. They were built on a common interest. They were built on a common connection. And for the time that person's there, it's magic.
Yeah.
Absolutely magic.
Yeah.
But you'll get holiday cards from them, right? Personally. And to you, and that's how much you actually mean, or that person means to that family. So the drawbacks of being there and just living is difficult. I think I've
foreign language.
I think I've told 1,000 people who have called me about wanting to work in Hawaii. It's not all palm trees and cool breezes, man.
No.
This is a tough place to live.
Yeah.
So when you get past the beautiful resort on the beach and you go to Safeway and you spend $22 for eggs and milk, and you go home and you're like, wow, that seriously? or it took me 9 months to license my car, right? These are just realities of being in different spaces. If you don't have the temperament for that,
right,
you're going to burn yourself out. You're going to fight uphill. There's a dream of a place, and the grass is always greener, right? It's only green where you water it. Yeah. You've got to pay attention to it. You have to realize there's a reality of cultivating the greenness that you want that place to be.
When did you come to realize that? Because I mean, was there a point where you were chasing the greener grass? Or did
No, I absolutely was chasing the greener grass.
When did you come to that realization that, the grass is not actually greener? You got to cultivate that thing within yourself.
It started in Telluride, but without a whole lot of realization.
Right.
And I would say that it was there because of one other challenge that we face in a lot of these distant resort destinations, is cultivating talent, right?
Right.
Having somebody who can actually provide the service, execute the vision,
right,
and pulling from a very small pool of people.
Sure.
And in Telluride, I had a tremendous general manager who really helped me to understand that when we were recruiting for a job, we would recruit nationally, right? And you'd put out for a director level job, and it would be, just a director of rooms or some significant professional job within the hospitality industry. You could pull from urban environments, you could pull from other resorts. And this gentleman really taught me that unless they loved Telluride first, the job was never going to be good enough.
Right.
And so we really upended our recruiting process to look from within at that point. And what that started to foster in me was that all these people could, and I watched this happen, right? Somebody would come from the outside and you'd move to a place like Telluride or even Aspen where there's even more things to do and more exposure. You would move there, and if it wasn't exactly what you thought it was going to be, right? All the beauty and all the grandeur of being in these legendary locations. And then, you know what, the whole rest of your life still has to be lived, right? Your kids still have to go to school. Your wife has to like it, or your husband has to like it. You still have to go grocery shopping. You still have to fill your soul. If you didn't find your soul in that place first, you were never going to be successful as a professional. Right. And those areas really spin people out. 1 year, 2 years, you get to your second season on something and people really question, you know, whether they should be there or not. And so that was the first time that I think I started realizing the specialness of the place and the people connection is what made for lasting opportunity. I was still really young and dumb and looking for the next thing, right? It was just, hey, cool, I've been here for 2 years, let's go somewhere else. I mean, there was a point in my life that I lived in 8 states in 8 years. And that was fun for me, right? Yeah. And Janine thought I was nuts, and then she started getting in the bandwagon and thought I was great after that. But the idea that we could constantly move and go and find something else, and then you get to a point of finding, whether it's maturity or in my case probably lack thereof, finding that anchor at some point was really important. When I moved to Italy, oh dear Sylvia, who's still there, and I love you, Sylvia. She's amazing. She ran the property. Sylvia sat me down and said, Mike, you need to learn the language. And I said, okay, I've got to start. I literally just completed 2 intensive quarters of Italian in college, right before I moved here. Wow. And so I had this in the back of my brain. I can't say I was any good at it. And she said, you have to learn the people. You have to start with the people because there's nothing that you can bring. There's no amount of money that you can spend that is going to make this place any greater than the people who are here and the culture that's already here. So connect with them by learning the language. Sure. Connect with them by respecting them within that environment, and then empower them to do what's great. Empower them to bring this to life. Because I guarantee you, somebody who's been here for 40 years and grew up in that house right over there, they're going to deliver the authentic Italian experience in a totally different way. Right. And your job is to curate that. Sure. And it was a really great awakening to, you know, this is going to be an incredible environment, but I actually had to make it become an incredible environment for me to connect with the people, for me to be fulfilled professionally, and for my family to feel connected in the space. And then that comes through in everything else. So, it took a while. I mean, that was well into my career before I really realized that you had to water the grass. It wasn't just going to be better.
You guys were heading off to Greece for a little trip to Greece with just you and Janine and the kids. You didn't make it. We were heading to France. We didn't make it. So where to next?
We had this trip planned for...
Said you ended up eating overcooked lamb at my house.
for 2020. But it was fantastic company. Absolutely brilliant. We moved that trip forward. So that trip, we had already put down a deposit on a catamaran. We were sailing. We're going to go sail the Dalmatian coast. We're going to start in Greece. Kids have both just gone through ancient Greek blocks in school, which is tremendous. Like if every time they do something in school, I could take them to that place and put them in that environment, I would absolutely love to. My parents did that for me in 5th grade when we did American history, and we went and did the entire Washington D.C. and you know, the Jamestown and all of that, Williamsburg. So we're gonna go to Greece and go up and sail from Split to down to Dubrovnik, and then fly to Paris for a couple of days, and then fly home. So that trip's been pushed off to the summer from last summer. So we're gonna keep that plan, and we've got fingers crossed on that, and do that with my best friend's family. They live in Denver, and they're going to meet us over there to do the sailing part of the trip. So that's really the North Star right now is making that trip come to fruition. Croatia's been really interesting during this whole pandemic in that they've kept their borders pretty open. They cater to a lot of tourism and maintain that, which I think has been tremendous. They've also learned a lot. I think they've failed forward on their decisions.
Sure. Yeah.
And unfortunately, they're shutting back down a little bit right now, like most people are. UK shutting down today or yesterday, like complete lockdown. I think most European countries are going to go through that for a little bit, but we're still looking forward to going into June. Hopefully we'll be on that trip. Speaking of home, we are trying to get back to Aspen for a ski vacation. It'll be the first trip back to Aspen in 3.5 years, I guess. Thinking about the idea of what is the next trip and how sort of two polar opposite sides of our thought process have come out. That one is the new adventure, the bucket list, the thing that we've had on our radar to put out there that you get excited about, right? That's our big trip next year. It's the kids are starting to learn about the places that we're going to go and things, and then the other side of it is our whole family want to get back to Colorado. We want to go surf. We want to go ski. We want to go connect with friends and ground back into something that is so comfortable and so close. And I think the pandemic has brought out both of those in so many different ways.
And it's tough because you only have you have so much time and you have so much money, and you're going to spend money to travel, and you're going to go, and I'm having the same experience in which I'm like, I really miss my family. I want to go to the Northwest. I want to see my brother and my sisters and nieces and nephews, and I want to give them all hugs and stuff like that. And at the very same time, I'm just, man, I want to get
I want to go somewhere amazing.
Oh man, the bucket list thing is just calling my name. I'm like, I really want to go to Jordan. I think I told you that before. I want to see Petra with my own eyes.
How much would you love to stand there?
Just to stand there.
Tremendous.
You know what I mean? That's a tough one, man. That's a tough one.
Yeah. I think it is. I think it's interesting that the pandemic and its impact on our planning and where we're putting important things, because I think it hits people in very different ways, right? Depending on where you live, it would be different if you and I lived on the West Coast and we could drive to Seattle and go see our family and our friends, back home, versus no matter what we do from here, we've got to get on a plane. It's sort of an epic adventure, no matter what, to leave Hawaii and go somewhere. So you want to make sure that you're getting the most out of it. But we've definitely been called back to this home of Colorado and this home of skiing, this thought of being back in the mountains. My kids want to throw snowballs so bad. That has almost overtaken this big trip to Europe, and my kids know Europe really well, right? I mean, my oldest daughter traveled to Europe 8 times. Wow. But before she was 2, she was literally the best traveler you've ever seen. She would come in like little Miss Smarty Pants, right? Like dragging her little carry-on. She would come into her aisle. She'd unzip her bag. She'd take out her blanket. She'd roll it out. She'd put a book up, a couple things to play with, and she'd just sit down and people would be like, first class wherever she goes, doesn't matter. She's in first class. She owned it, so it was amazing. But we haven't been back to Europe in a while. They haven't been back in several years, and so going on this trip where it was going to satisfy this educational side, this new adventure side, and Paris has been a destination we want to get back to with them for a long time. And to have that almost be overshadowed by like wanting to go back and see their best friends from when they lived in Colorado. I mean, they were 4 and 6 when they left, but they still keep in such great touch. So it's pretty cool.
That's an unusual kind of an unforeseen repercussion. I was going through old emails because I was looking for something today on email, and I went back and I was reading emails from March 2020 and April 2020 and stuff, and how, and all of them were like, oh, we're going to be closed for like a month,
Right.
The boat's going, but we'll open up, when they get this figured out, and how none of us could foresee that we'd spend the next year just stopped. I ran into
Can you imagine we're 2 months away from being a year?
I know, it's bananas.
That's amazing.
It's bananas, man. I ran into a guy who's a friend of mine who's a very, very wealthy guy. He has homes all over the planet. And I ran into him the other day, and we were walking, and he said, I haven't left Maui since April. And I was looking at him, and he owns a private jet. And I was like, oh man, like that's tough, you know, like you know what I mean? And it was weird to see we're all probably having that same experience. Like if you have a private jet, like where's the first place you're going? Mm-hmm. It's probably not, you know, Cabo. You're probably heading home to see mom. You know, you're going somewhere to just give a hug to someone that you want to give a hug to. You know,
you go help cement your compass.
Yeah,
right? I think a lot of people need that right now.
I think so
We've
too.
been in this prolonged period of uncertainty and this prolonged period of isolation that we need to refill that void, and some of us will refill it by traveling and connecting with new cultures and food and amazing sights, and some of us will refill that simply by changing the scenery, and some of us will refill it by having dinner at mom's table.
Yeah,
man, there's nothing better.
Yeah, my mom's not a great cook, and it's weird when I start looking forward to having dinner at her house, you know? It's like, you know,
that means something.
Yeah, I just want to sit down and just kind of, I don't know. That's interesting.
That's pretty funny.
It's almost superfluous to talk about where we think the travel industry is going to head this year because we can predict all day, but it is still somewhat unpredictable in the whole kind of process, right? I mean, you've got people on the inside, you know?
I got people.
You got people.
I got a guy.
You got a guy. What are your people saying about kind of where travel's heading? I mean, we were dealing before the pandemic. We were talking about over-tourism in Maui and talking about too many people and how do we cope with that? Where do you see it heading in 2021? And when?
And when? I think that's the biggest thing. Right. I think we all see it heading in the right direction. I think we all see it bouncing back, and I'm not even tourism just in Hawaii, but around. But it's amazing to think that in 2019, 1.4 billion people traveled internationally. Billion in 2019.
That's more than.
I mean that
like
number.
A large fraction.
I don't know what
planet.
It is in 2020.
Yeah,
but it's a lot closer to zero than it is closer to 1.41 billion, right? Yeah. And so that's going to come back. That it'll be there. It's just going to be a bit of a rocky road to how we get there. You know, you look at tourism or typical hospitality, right? In the hospitality industry right now, and everybody's saying transient, you know, which is basically leisure vacations, right, is going to bounce back fastest, and then business and international travel will be last. So, you know, we're kind of looking at business travel, you know, maybe starting to pick up Q3 of 2021, but really into the fourth quarter of 2021 into 2022. And I'm not talking about rebounding back to where it was by any means. I'm just picking up in some semblance or measurement that you can actually attribute a trend to. The international travel is going to be really interesting. We here on Maui have a tremendous contingent of people who come from Canada, and it's not that they don't want to come here. This is one of the safest places to be, but Canadians are hindered by coming here because of what they face when they go back home.
Right.
You know, they can come here on a 3-day pre-travel negative COVID test and vacation and have a great time in Maui. But when they return to Canada, they have to quarantine for 14 days.
Yeah.
And that's evolving, obviously, as things keep going. But the domestic limitations in these international locations are going to be really limiting for a while.
Right.
I also think that the desire of the average traveler to still travel, but to do it in small chunks, is going to outweigh the airline travel for a while. Right. You know, and airlines are going to have a hard time figuring out what is their cadence. They are right now, right? Because things are changing and cases spike and they change. They change airlift and locations and rules change in Hawaii, so they have to bob and weave at that, right? All of these things will contribute to, we're in this amazing time of starting to distribute a vaccine that can potentially put an end to the craziest thing we've all been through in our lives, right? And we went through 9/11. Yeah. We went through the credit crisis. We went through .com bubble in 2000. We've had this every decade kind of thing going on, and this one takes the cake, right? Roll them all into one, and we have this vision. We have this exit strategy, if you will, that is in front of us, but we're at a point today, January 4th or whatever it is today, that we still have rules in place that prohibit free travel. Mm-hmm. We have the vision of what it's going to be because the vaccine's coming. But am I going to travel before I can get the vaccine? No, it's line of sight right now for me. My parents just canceled coming here. Because the line of sight for them to get the vaccine is so close, they're going to wait 3 months or 2 months or however long it's going to take them to get it. And I think that there's so much good that's happening for the travel industry from a positive invention of and reinvention of rules for travel and ways to make it safe and conduits to build these bridges to travel again. But there's a real hesitation because hopefully the fix is on its way, right? So I think a lot of people are kind of handcuffed right now. So I see the first month of the year or first 6 months of the year as being pretty slow from a travel perspective. I think we need to get into the mean adult population from a vaccine perspective to start seeing meaningful travel. Right. There will be, hopefully because of baby boomers receiving the vaccine first, you'll start seeing some of that travel. But for the most part, I think you'll see a lot of that being familial travel. I think you'll see a lot of it being closer to home. It's not going to be it's not going to be self-engaged travel. I think it's going to be about their families and their close-knit communities. And then in the latter half of the year, going through the summer, we should start seeing the pickup back to nowhere near back to normal, but compared to where we're at right now, a massive gain, right? Massive gain. Yeah. And then we're going to be on, I would say, a 3 to 5, probably closer to 5 year, real slow trajectory back to growth. We're not going to return to 2019 numbers in 2022. Right. We're going to double, triple, quadruple where we're at right now by the end of this year, and then we're at that last maybe third of that business is I think is going to take a while just to adopt its systems, its countries opening back up. It's just a lot of thing that's in there. So we're kind of in the messy middle right now. And I keep telling people, don't get frustrated with this period right now. This period is very purposeful, but it is messy. Allow that to happen. It's okay. We can't have too many expectations. It's just hard to travel right now. It's a pain. And so we need to make it as easy as possible for people who do want to travel. We need to take away the guessing game from them as much as possible. We need to be as gracious and lean into just radical customer service as much as possible to have people enjoy their time. But don't have a whole lot of expectations for the broader market. But it'll come. I feel good about the future. And we hear it on the phone every day. Yeah. I see it in emails. I hear it in conversations that I have with people. They're so excited to travel again. They're so excited to get back to what they love. Yeah. And that feeds your soul, right? Because you hear these people light up about something that they want to go do. I rode out past Ulupalakua on the way to Nu'u and rode back the other day, and I literally stopped on my bike and I just smiled. I was just like, this is amazing, absolutely tremendous. And that is, for us, the gift of the pandemic, right? For many others it's not. But when those tourists do come back, God, I want them to have a good time.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
I want them to
feel the same way.
Soak it.
I want to just be like, you know how amazing this place is. I want to show you every inch of it. I want to make those connections for them, like we were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so important, so important.
Well, listen, that's such a great place to kind of cap it. We do this thing you probably know about. At the end, I ask the guests to kind of, if you could leave a blessing for the audience, and it's whatever just you would want to, from your perspective in your heart, just take it away.
Something I've been sharing with my team and coaching with my team as we have experienced our own growth of cases in Hawaii and our own dealing with the ups and downs of the economic impacts that have come along with this is I philosophically am very grounded in the Stoic philosophy and looking towards Epictetus And one of my favorite quotes from him is, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." That's how I view the pandemic right now and what we're going through. Don't let the outside world and the things you can't control drive you nuts.
The Voyagers podcast is produced by Sugar Sled Productions and recorded in Kula on the island of Maui. It's hosted by me, David Glenn Taylor. I want to thank my friend Mike for taking time away from his family at dinner time, no less, to sit down with me and talk about travel. I walked away from this conversation encouraged and feeling incredibly grateful for the blessing of friends and this beautiful island home, and hopeful that we'll get to show it off to all of you someday soon. If you enjoyed what you heard, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Helps me grow the audience. You're in season 2. Keep the conversations going. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor like Maui Dream Properties or in supporting this podcast, you can go to voyagerspodcast.com and click the link to become a Patreon supporter and to become a sponsor. Let's start a conversation by email. David@voyagerspodcast.com. Next week, season 2 rolls on. We go from traveling in style to traveling in possibly the most harsh and challenging way possible. We're talking with Dallas Seavey, 4-time winner of the world's last great race, Alaska's 1,000-mile Iditarod. What does it take to run a team of sled dogs through brutal winter conditions and make it to Nome in one piece? That's next week on the Voyagers Podcast. Mahalo for listening, friends.
Absolutely.
You've had this before, the coyote?
Yeah, he gave this to me once. This is a great way to spend an evening.
Right. Well, I've taken you time away from your family. I really appreciate it, man.
Oh, they're tired of me. They're glad I'm there.
Right.